Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 915. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
I'm George Conger. Today's May 20th, 2025.
All right, welcome to another episode. We are glad you could join us as viewers and listeners. If you don't know, sit up front, like this episode, share this episode, comment on this episode, and if you don't like looking at two aged Anglicans, you could listen to the podcast. You'll find the link to that in the show notes on YouTube. This is not the first time we're going to talk about the next two topics, because we're doing Anglican Unscripted part 1 of 915 here, and I looked over, I saw I was not recording it. I don't know if I bumped the button or what happened, or if I just had a senior moment, George. Not sure. So you were in prison. Why don't you give us an update? You're free. How'd it go?
I was participated in a Kairos prison ministry week at Sumter Correctional Institute, a maximum security prison, just down the road from your place in Webster,
yes.
in Bushnell. Set up Wednesday, there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Oh, it's extraordinary. We had 24 volunteers from outside meet with 24 inmates, convicts, and there are 1,600 men there. And so you apply to be part of this program. Mm-hmm. So these are people who are questioning. They want to know Christ. They want to get their lives together. So the odds are in our favor.
Yeah.
But by the time it was done, my goodness, to see people give their lives to Jesus Christ, to confess of their sin, to repent. Oh, Kevin, now Kairos, our particular Kairos, is Episcopal heavy, meaning that we have 4 or 5 volunteers from St. John's in Tampa. We have some volunteers from my church, and an Episcopalians from, it's about half the guys are Episcopalian, but then they're Catholics, this, that, the other, Pentecostals. There's a bike guy goes to the biker church. But this really is God's people ministering in God's time. Mm-hmm. It's not denominational. It's not, we're going to teach you how to fill out a pledge card, and whenever Captain Jeffrey Shorey comes on the TV, how to change the channel. But rather bringing people into a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And gosh, it's the best way you can spend a day.
It is.
Spend a lifetime.
It is, because we're talking about the ultimate burden. I'm here for 10 years, 15, 20. Some people are there forever. And they want to find a way to unburden themselves.
Sumter's not a short-term prison. So most people there are 25 years. Mm-hmm. And then there are a lot of lifers. So there are a lot of older men there. One fellow had just finished his 45th year at my table. So these are guys who have, and then there's some young guys that, person's a young black man from West Tampa sitting next to me all week. We were assigned seats. And share a little bit of his story. He was, didn't have a father growing up. He basically grew up on the streets. His mother loved him, but his mother couldn't control him, and he got involved in gangs, and he's been in there for 10 years. He's just turning 30, and he's got 15 more to go. And, you sort of imagine what you're going to talk about. I was going to, all set to talk about why you shouldn't shoot people, why you shouldn't deal drugs, why you shouldn't stick up liquor stores, and God will forgive you for that. Well, that's the easy stuff, frankly. Kevin, that's the easy stuff. Because He asked if he could meet with me, and essentially he had never had a father. He could ask questions of me the way a boy would ask of his father. And you can get your bleep button out. He wanted to know that now that he had given his life, this is a Sunday morning, now that he had given his life to Jesus Christ on Saturday night, mm-hmm. and he had confessed of his criminal behavior, still he was tempted by masturbation. Mm-hmm. He said, now, the state of Florida, in prisons, it's illegal to masturbate. friends, you probably never knew that, but
I did not know that.
And I actually went to the chaplain in his office at lunchtime. I said, "Is it illegal to masturbate in prison?" And he sort of looked at me and said, "What do you have in mind?" And he said, "Yes. The reason why is like there are 300 or 400 men in the room, and there are some sex perverts there, and they would just love to. They would get their jollies by masturbating in front of other people. So it's a punishable offense. You get thrown in the hole and all that good stuff if you watch Cool Hand Luke."
For YouTube purposes, let's not say that now and again.
All right.
All right.
This is a medical program.
Sure. No. Well, yeah.
But the point is, I had to talk we talked at length, as if I were a father and he a son, or a grandfather and a grandson, or a coach and a student, or an athlete, or a student, a teacher,
a mentor.
He had never had this. No. Would he be kicked out of the kingdom of God? Where was lust? He said, I'm afraid if I don't, I'm going to, we have to use euphemisms from this point forward, join the other team.
Sure, absolutely.
And how do I deal with this? And I could have basically said, oh, well, just pray, take cold showers, do push-ups like we were at Boy Scout camp. No, you go home after Boy Scout camp and you grow up. You're no longer 16. This man's 30. He's going to be here till he's 45. And he's done 10. And we talk about look forward to the joy of your reunion in relationship with your wife. We don't have conjugal visits in Florida prisons. We don't have any way for him to have an outlet. And so he has to find that middle ground where he can not succumb to lust and look forward to the gift of sexuality given to him by God his Father. See, here's the funny thing. When I went in last week, Kevin, I was no more prepared to talk about
that
pleasuring yourself. Then I was all set to talk about, well, you shouldn't have killed that guy. I know that cop had it coming, but I was all set for that. But what's the reality of life? It's these little things.
Sure.
Compared to the things that put you there. It's the little things of living there day by day. And I just feel so blessed to be able to, since I only had daughters, this never came up in my household. And if it ever did, I would go, Susan, I'm going to change the car oil. You go talk to the girls now.
I mean, but those are the things that we miss out in this society where sex is so free and you walk around with a little device here. This device in 2025 is here to tell you who you are and to give you access to everything in the world. And it's destroying the lives of our children and our youth. It gives them too much information, too much access, and it's there to tell them who they are. And that's why we have kids who are gender confused and sexually confused, and if they haven't been groomed before they're 12, they'll be groomed after they're 12. So
pornography, I believe, is one of the great evils of our time. I truly believe it has destroyed lives. And
absolutely.
A lot of people say, "Oh, what's harmless? This and that." And that's not harmless. It rewires your brain. It rewires the way you think, the way you believe, the way you act. And I think it leads ultimately to destruction.
Are you hearing lawnmowers? I'm paranoid they're going to show up. They're way over there. So you let me know if it gets too loud, because I have my noise canceling earphones on. But we should move on to the news real quick. But if you ever get a chance to do this type of ministry offered by your church, our church up in Echo Creek does it, join it. I've not done it, but I've heard so many great testimonies, and I've never had a person come back from a week at a prison and say, yeah, that was a waste of my time. It changes you, because you have the opportunity to unburden a person who's going to be burdened for years.
Now, here's the okay. Well, let's get going, because I don't want to hijack the show from you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, that's right. Here we go. Let's move on. Pope Leo We were going to talk a lot about him last week. We got burdened down talking about Calvin Robinson, who is story number 2 this week. Bob from Chicago is now Pope Leo of the Vatican, and he gave his first Mass, and he spoke about the church, about ecumenicalism. And I thought we need to talk about that because, hey, maybe he's going to accept us Anglicans finally as real people. What's going on, George?
Well, I was almost thinking that the Pope would break out and sing, "I'd like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony."
Da, da, da.
Before 150,000 Roman Catholics in St. Peter's Square on last Saturday, as well as invited Christian ecumenical guests and interfaith guests, Leo gave a sermon, and one of the things he said is that, quote, "Love and unity, these are the 2 dimensions of the mission entrusted to Peter by Jesus." What Leo was doing was moving from that, "Thou art Peter, and you are the rock on which I found my church." He's moving that from the ultramontane, there is no salvation outside of the church unless you are on Peter's team, to Peter is, his conversion is the rock on which we stand. His faith is the rock on which we stand. Another line, if the rock is Christ, it's not Peter. The rock is Christ. Peter must shepherd the flock without ever yielding to the temptation to be an autocrat, lording it over those entrusted to him. So the old days of no salvation outside the church has been put to bed. And this, the papacy is called to serve the faith of his brothers and sisters and to walk alongside them, and underscoring the role of all baptized people as the living stones. That's from 1 Peter. To build God's house in a fraternal communion in the harmony of the Spirit and the coexistence of diversity. This is not DEI talk, nor is this silly Coca-Cola commercials from the 1970s. This is rather Leo opening a door that some in the Catholic world had wanted to shut firmly. This is Leo widening the circle rather than making exclusionary rulings. And this has set off some excitement and hope and bombs, and it's really pissing off, excuse me, I should have said that. It's upsetting some of the more rigid Catholic types.
Well, we live in
oh no, Francis too.
Well, they were upset when the first Pope left the Vatican in the 60s by airplane. I mean, it's easy to upset people. And in this day and age, we're always listening closely, doing that EFI, and what's Leo saying now? And we're trying to figure out, is he going to be conservative? Is he going to be the next liberal Francis, or the next Pope John Paul II? Who is Leo? And we can only describe Leo by holding him up against previous popes. And
he's I don't want to use conservatives and liberals because those are political terms. I mean, this is not really political in that sense, but it's the only words I can think of. His initial appointments, last week we said policy is personnel. You look at who he puts into power, and that is sort of a direction. He got rid of one cardinal who was famous for having him being a little...
I think Arnold Schwarzenegger would say a girly man.
A girly man.
Girly man, right.
And who supported the girly man, James Martin, sort of Catholic. That guy's out, and a traditionalist is in. First week. So the personnel changes are coming very slowly. It's not wholesale. But corner by corner, the blob, the equivalent of the blob that we have in the Church of England, the faceless, nameless people who control the money and positions and the power, these guys and their brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church are being shown the door slowly, but their numbers are not being added to.
One of the key things you have to do if you're going to offer an ecumenical church is and recognize other denominations as churches. Right now, the only other denomination recognized as a church is the Orthodox Church by the Roman Catholics. We're called what? What are we called?
Ecclesial communities.
I'm an I belong to part of an ecclesial community, not a church, according to the Roman Catholic Church. Is he willing to have open table? Is he willing to say, listen, anybody who's been baptized and is following Christ may come to the Eucharist? And that's a stepping stone in my mind to having good ecumenical relations.
I think hell will freeze over before we have any structural changes. And I'm not being sarcastic, and I'm not being nasty or just to be fun. One of the things that we need to understand, sort of behind the scenes stuff, which you and I do so well compared to a lot of people, is that in the Catholic Church, pre-Leo, it was the liberals who were pushing hard for ecumenical reunion, starting with changing the Episcopal Church or the Anglican churches, all of them, from ecclesiastical communities to churches with a capital C. Then the next hope would be, as you say, all baptized Christians, as I say in my church every Sunday, are welcome to receive communion at this altar. That's what the German Catholic bishops have been trying to do. They've been saying, okay, if you've been divorced and in the past you've not been allowed to come up, if you're baptized and you're made your confession, you can come forward. If you're gay and in a relationship, you can make a confession. If you're a Protestant married to a Catholic, you can come forward. The German Catholic Church has been pushing this line, and they're on the extreme liberal side of the equation. With Leo appointing more conservatives, it's not really going to click, because on the Protestant side, it's the conservatives who want reunion. So you've got liberal Catholics and conservative Protestants. And I'm including Anglicans in there so I don't have to list 10 different names. The conservative Protestants are now finding themselves talking to conservative Catholics, because Leo's not going to be doing the talking. It's going to be levels 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And as they're filled by Leo's men or like-minded men who try to do Leo's will, they will come back to, I'm sorry, Reformed Episcopal Church, but you got women, you're doing pretty good, but the other parts of the ACNA, they have women clergy. And I'm sorry, Diocese of Central Florida, you have women clergy, but you don't do the gay stuff, but drive down to Miami, you've got both. So the gay issue and the women clergy issue are insurmountable obstacles at this stage to reunion of all churches, of liturgical Protestant churches.
But if you're willing to confess your sins and reform as a church, maybe there's a ecumenical way forward. I don't know.
But I don't think so, because the traditional minded Catholic view is that there is a way forward. It's the ordinariate. If you're an Anglican, give in.
Yeah.
We'll let you keep your smells and bells and double-breasted cassocks, but you still have to acknowledge the magisterium of the Pope, and that's not what is on the table.
Yeah, when you think of the whole scope of the two topics we're talking about here, women clerics and the gay issue, the Episcopal Church, women clerics, Evangelical Lutheran Church, women clerics, Presbyterian Church, women clerics, United Methodist Church, United Church of Christ, Disciples of Christ, American Baptist Church, even the Southern Baptist is on the verge. So these are not going to be discussions where they're going to have an ecumenical relationship with Rome, and maybe just the Orthodox, and that's it.
Now, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod could say,
sure,
they're probably the biggest one still out there, independent out there, who say no, who tick all the boxes that don't put the Catholics off. But then the Missouri LCMS, okay, they don't want reunion with Rome because they think Rome's errors are sending the Catholics to hell.
Yeah.
So it's, I know there's one there's one ACNA leader that before he dies, his hope, his just greatest ambition, his joy, is to see a reunion of Christendom.
Yeah.
I hope he finds the Fountain of Youth next time we visit to Florida, because he's going to have to wait a long time.
Long time. Well, it's difficult. A church that has spent 2,000 years dividing itself is not going to reunite in a single papal generation here. So, but we pray for it. John 17. We pray for it all the time. Let's move on.
Can I just give a personal anecdote?
Yeah.
As some of our viewers know, I was permitted to attend the exorcist training program for Catholic clergy in Rome in 2023. And there were about 150 clergy there, religious priests, whatnot, and 3 Anglican priests. One from the ACNA, from the Diocese of Fort Worth, an Episcopal priest from the Diocese of Chicago, high and smells and bells and, the old school, Nashotah House Anglo-Catholics, and me, George, an evangelical Protestant. They allowed me to come, and they treated me no differently than anybody else. There was no distinguishing between me and my other students in any way, shape, or form. 2020, and after that was over and I talked about it, I had a lot of people from the ACNA say, well, how can I do this? This is so wonderful. I said, well, all I needed was to have my bishop, endorse my application and write a letter saying, yes, I want this priest, and he is of mature years and mature. In other words, you can't just say, oh, this is like being a Green Beret or something, the special forces of the church. No, it's not. It's the old fart squad who've been around and seen it all. So they sent all these applications in, and I don't know how many were invited but I know it was very few compared to the number who asked. And this year, in looking at the way the rules are written, you have to have your local Catholic priest endorse Catholic bishop endorse your application. Now, what changed? Well, Robert Prevost became the head of the dicastery of Congregation of Bishops, excuse me.
Yeah, you need to say Bob from Chicago.
Bob from Chicago. Yeah. And Bob from Chicago, his influence, he had responsibility ultimately over who the bishops allowed to be trained as exorcists. Mm-hmm. Bob, I'm sure he didn't wake up and say, well, George Conger, he just poisoned that well. And I mean, my God, he ate with his mouth open. His fly was down the entire time. He picked his nose while he was at the altar. We can't have anybody else like him. That could have been it. Or Bob's men politely and obliquely just squeeze the doors shut so that it is now a Catholic thing. Mm-hmm. It's not an ecumenical thing. I think that's the way we're going to go with Leo.
Well, we shall see, as I always say. History will tell us exactly who Leo is. And, his ministry is one we hope does reunite the church. I would pray that for every new pope. There's been 6 popes since 1965 when I was born, George. So let's move on to some more topics. We're going to talk about Calvin Robinson. Before I talk about Calvin Robinson, I need to talk about the Anglican Unscripted audience. And I'm going to bring up this here real quick. Switch this over. And boom, we are on the YouTube page. I'm going to go over here and click on Analytics. And the audience here, believe it or not, is the average age is about 60. It's crazy when you look at the audience. You guys are older. You guys are most likely to watch this. 43% watch it on your mobile phone. 25% watch this on your computer. 20% watch Unscripted on your TV. Good job, people. Of that viewers, only 60% of you are subscribed. Let's do age and years. Look at this. 65 plus is 62%, George. That's just crazy.
Have you been in touch with Procter & Gamble about running Depends?
Something like that, Johnson & Johnson.
The sort of commercials we see on Fox News, for the old men.
Age and gender, this isn't really a big surprise. 76% of you are male. The rest are female. We have no non-gendered people watching, apparently. So Yeah,
Well,
it's
that cuts
interesting
into our
to,
Episcopal audience.
yeah, it's interesting to look at that. But the biggest thing to look at is content. When you look at the content, when I put Calvin Robinson in a title, we get almost double the viewership, if not like 40% more. Last show we did, Calvin Robinson in the ACNA, 9,000 views. Show before that was Inside the Conclave, which I thought would be a really good show. Barely 5,000 views, 5,000, 4,000. Let's see our next big episode. Oh, here's a 9,000. It's the interview with Calvin. So, if I just wanted to, what's this one? Calvin's visa canceled, another 10,000. If I just wanted to do the show for numbers, I would just Anglican Unscripted, Calvin Robinson. That would be the title. But we don't do it for numbers, George. Yeah.
Can you do Calvin Robinson meets Taylor Swift?
Something like that. Well,
So, let's get as many little things that'll click the algorithm for people.
Sure.
If we want the younger people to come.
So for story 2, it would be no lie that Calvin Robinson is a polarizing lightning rod within Anglicanism, within the church. He has many gifted charisms, and when we reported last week that Ray Sutton had signed a temporary license for Calvin and would allow him some protection with the REC, you and I reported it, and we thought it was, a good story, and it was a good step forward for the ACNA to make. We actually had received a press release from the ACNA front office, like 45 minutes before we taped. We read through that and said read what they said about it, and I thought we did a good episode. We heard from the ACNA office that probably not our best episode. And so let's talk a little bit about the pushback for Unscripted and the pushback for the recent news that REC has rescinded the offer to Calvin, George.
Yeah, less than 9 days after he was licensed by Ray Sutton, which does not mean he joined the REC, but he was given a license by the REC, akin to what they give the priest over at the Mariners Church in Detroit. Ecclesial covering. This was rescinded. And it was rescinded by Ray Sutton, who in his notes said he was not pressured to do so. But it was one of those things where, I've been pressured to do this.
Well, it's interesting because when we read Archbishop Steve Wood's statement, there was clearly some discomfort with having Calvin in any way tied to the ACNA. And he went through a litany of his welcome letter to Calvin. Let me list your sins and why we don't want you in the ACNA and how we want to distance ourselves from you, is how I read it.
Yeah, and the Steve Wood things was, I think, was ill-considered, and I don't think he wrote it. I think he signed it.
I think it was a copy and paste. I don't know. Yeah.
There were some things that were like jarring. Reverend Robinson. You either call him Father Robinson or Mr. Robinson or the Reverend Robinson. Reverend Robinson is a slur. This is what, if you remember the old firing line with William F. Buckley, he would have Jesse Jackson on, and he would say, Reverend Jackson. And it was basically to show that disdain, that you weren't quite a real priest, you weren't quite a real minister. So the language, the vocabulary was not somebody who was in and of the church world. But the first comment that they wrote to us was in complaint to our episode was that they said this, Archbishop Wood was and is in close contact with Bishop Sutton throughout these events and did not release anything publicly that he did not first share with the Bishop Sutton and allow him an opportunity to revise and amend. So we were basically saying that it looked to us that Bishop Sutton was being pressured. And their response was, well, he was being pressured, but we gave him the opportunity to, get right with Archbishop Wood before Archbishop Wood went public. Now, my problem, and I wrote back to them saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it, does it?" What so far they've written in the forms of press releases is unilateral action was taken by Bishop Wood against Bishop Sutton. They're saying now that that's not so. This was a mutual meeting of minds, and if true, that's wonderful. But the public presentation from the tiny little itty bitty things that will sort of get people going, because the Anglo-Catholics are the ones that are most upset, and the conservative evangelicals. And when you start trotting out Reverend Robinson language, that's just, stepping on their toes, not in addition to the content. So Firestorm, a PR firestorm was created that just has not yet burnt itself out.
No,
you think I'm making too much of that, Kevin?
No, I don't. Well, here's the problem. The problem is, Steve Wood's brand new to the Archbishop role. Granted, new heads for the who's in charge of the ACNA. Andrew Gross is out as the communications person, looking for another communications person. Everything's different. Like the first 100 days of Trump, here we're in the first 200 days of Archbishop Wood. And 200 about that. And so we have to look at it as far as, every time there's a new person in charge and a new organizational structure on how to communicate their ideas. I don't think this press release was the best articulation of their ideas. This press release came with disdain. This press release came with judgment, and I read into it some anger. And from you and I for the last 25 years have seen liberal priests and liberal vetted clergy and bishops within the Episcopal Church and within the ACNA not receive any notice whatsoever. Here we have Calvin Robinson, who's anti-women orders, pro-life. He ticks a lot of the Anglo-Catholic buttons as to the perfect priest. He is now a lightning rod.
Yeah, the ACNA office upbraided us because we said we saw this as a personal attack on attack on Calvin Robinson's personal character. And the letter and the response from the Archbishop's office was, well, the letter responded to Robinson's, quote, public comments and persona that consistently fail to exhibit the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. Now, that may be their opinion, but here's the problem. It's none of his darn business. See, we don't,
don't judge.
Read Leo's sermon
from last week, this week,
about autocracy and a monarchical church. The canon law and the custom of Anglicanism does not permit an archbishop to single out a priest in somebody else's diocese under somebody else's protection for public approbation, whether they deserve it or not, unless there's been an adjudication or finding by a ecclesiastical court. This is since it was written, it's libel. This is libelous because this is an assertion that he consistently fails to exhibit the love and grace of Jesus Christ. That you cannot say.
No.
Unless you can back it up with an adjudication or somebody who has authority over Calvin Robinson to say that. See, Steve Wood can tell the priests of the Diocese of the Carolinas to jump, and they'll say, how high, sir? To the ACNA, he can say to the College of Bishops, this is what I'd like us all to do, and the College of Bishops will have to go buzz, buzz, buzz. Yeah, we'll jump with you too. But if they don't want to jump, they don't have to, unless they're of reached that accord. And this is basically advice to the wider Anglican world.
Mhm.
And what he's done now is basically say to the Church of Nigeria or to the Anglo-Catholics out there, we have no need of you because you consistently fail to exhibit the love and grace of Jesus Christ.
Which is ironic. Well, hold on, which is ironic. Because we talked before about Calvin never having a good bishop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and clearly he's still in need of one. Since Calvin, let's see, ran into racist, sexist Sarah Malawi, his first bishop, he's basically been in episcopate foster care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's gone from one bishop to another bishop, and he's never found a good bishop. He's just been in this foster care system. And he finally, with the opportunity under the RC, was to get some good guidance and good care, and the RC was forced to turn him away.
Kevin, in your reading of Ray Sutton's letter, you said you saw exhaustion from Ray.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
it's titled my decision, and just you read the rest. It's an exhausted bishop.
The exhaustion probably comes from a number of things. Ray is the leader of the ecumenical movement within the ACNA. And so he has to basically present the ACNA to the partners and to the people they want to get closer to in the best possible light, theologically, this, that, and the other. And that's a hard time when you've got some really loosey-goosey ACNA people. Steve Woods is happy to criticize Calvin Robinson, whereas at the same time, he has a priest of his own diocese of the Carolinas writing an article in the Living Church magazine likening a lactating mother's breast milk to the blood of Jesus Christ as found in the Eucharist. Now, Kevin, you and I have been around long enough and have seen the craziness of the women's movement at its height. And we now get a new generation of women taking the old motifs and craziness that their predecessors, the Carter Haywoods, I don't know if
this is 1970s all over again. Sure, yeah.
We're getting it back now.
Mm-hmm.
And so the response is, hey, there's a two-tier system here. You can have a woman priest engage in, and in my opinion, because I have no authority in this matter, but in my opinion, to engage in rank heresy. Whether you believe in a spiritual presence or a real presence or this or that, it's not a mother's lactating milk we're talking about here, which through Sophia feeds the soul. That's where it goes down. We've been down this path before, and nobody's taken this woman priest aside and said, watch it, babe. This is what's happened in the past, and you are going way over the line. She's not criticized publicly by her own bishop. Calvin Robinson is libeled by the archbishop for things that are not theological. And if he is going to be beaten up, if he's going to be, as it said, outside the fullness of the Anglican tradition, you got to say, well, what are you people thinking? Mm-hmm. So who is it, what are the bigger issues? Within Anglicanism, real presence, spiritual presence, women's orders, the filioque or the non-filioque clause, is the episcopate the S or bene S? These are issues that are much, much larger than Calvin being rude on a stage by following an in-joke that conservatives know about the alleged Nazi salute of Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. And now the problem for Steve Wood is that he jumped on board the George Floyd BLM train and rode it with a few other ACNA bishops until that hit a wall. And now we all know that BLM is now a fraud, funded by George Soros and company. That George Floyd was not murdered. He died of a heart attack from a drug overdose. Yet has Steve Wood come back and said, well, brothers, I think I should have waited until all the facts came out before I jumped on the critical racism train and joined in rubbishing my denomination and my fellow Christians.
What a great example of a time to back up and look how other bishops had dealt with that. When DEI and woke was starting to take over a couple of the diocese, sorry.
Ecclesiastical communities
within the ACNA,
jurisdictions within an ecclesiastical community.
We had a couple of dioceses within ACNA in 2020, 2021 buy into the woke and buy into the DEI. Bishop Ray Sutton, not naming any of the dioceses, not naming any of the bishops, wrote a nice letter explaining how woke and DEI and all that is contrary to Scripture. We published it on Anglican Ink. And that's how you deal with the topics. That's how you deal with the heresies. You don't have to name names. And I think that was,
I'm going to speculate now, and I'm reading minds from afar, from the distance. I'm reading minds and motives. Why is Ray so exhausted? How did we reach this point? Why did he do this? Mm-hmm. Well, it was obvious that the Archbishop sat on him. The Archbishop has not absolute authority, but he can make life. Ray, I'm going to move you from your ecumenical job. I really want you to take on youth ministry within the ACNA. There are ways to sort of threaten without threatening. Let me go back to the Kairos prison. This young man who came to me asking me to be his father in God, I now have an obligation for the next 15 years until he's out to be there for him, to write him, to visit him, and on occasion to, respond to his questions that he'll write to me about how can I get close to Christ. That's an exhausting burden. Sometimes I would rather not take on another body because I have my parish here. Ray knows that Ray's one of the people looking to get closer to the Orthodox and to the Catholics. And Ray knows that hammering Calvin Robinson will infuriate those groups within the ACNA that want to be closer. So Ray is being pushed this way down by an archbishop who is a little wet behind the ears, and he's pushed being this way by the natural Calvin Robinson supporters in the REC and in the Anglo-Catholic world. And at the same time, he's got people saying, oh, well, just dump it. Somebody else will step in. So when Ray put out that, I'm defending Ray Sutton because I believe he's a man of integrity. I also believe Calvin Robinson's a man of integrity, and I believe the system has let them both down.
I believe Archbishop Steve Woods is a man of integrity. Every character here is a man of integrity. What we have here is called an unforced error. Every Archbishop of the ACNA has had one. I remember Duncan's, I remember Foley's. We're not going to discuss them here. But at some point, you are brought up to a brand new situation, and how you respond is so vacated to the entire world through social media and George and Kevin and other things that you have to be so careful of what you say, how you say it, and why you say it. And to put this welcome letter to Calvin Robinson is an unforced error. You need to rescind the letter or rewrite the letter or apologize for the letter. I'm saying that as humbly as possible. Because I'm never going to be in the situation that Steve Wood is in, having to deal with. And we fully admit Calvin Robinson is a lightning rod. He is, he has charisms that are beyond the pale, and he is a priest without a bishop right now. So
and there's some lies being put out there. First, that he has been kicked out of 5 denominations. Not true. It's not true. He has had a series of wretched bishops: Sarah Mullally, Fenwick, Mark Haverland. If Calvin can be uprated, it could be he did not treat the Nordic Catholic Church with the due deference that he could have. Now he's been dumped by the ACNA. Oh, there was a story that came out that he had joined some Orthodox jurisdiction. That's not true.
He didn't join the Orthodox Anglican Church? I read this on a blog somewhere.
No, actually how that happened was that the former Anglican priest who joined the Orthodox Anglican whatever, and then was kicked out of that and became his own bishop of his own jurisdiction, out of the goodness of his heart, and I mean that, out of the goodness of his heart, offered Calvin a safe harbor and put a license that he had prepared without telling Calvin on Facebook. And this was picked up as, oh, Calvin's not Orthodox. Oh, look at this guy. He can't even decide which way to button his pants. He's jumping around everywhere. Calvin had nothing to do with it. And Kevin, one of the things you and I worry about is that when we get intergalactic planetary exclusives, we've done this long enough to know that there are times when that exclusive can be absolutely wrong, and we can look like idiots. And what do you do when you've looked like an idiot? You apologize. You just, or remember when we had the story where Munir Nice had some sharp words about Justin Welby, and we reported those. And then the Anglican Communion News Service said we were liars because Munir Nice denied ever having said that. And we got the email from Munir Nice where he said this. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to embarrass Munir Nice, who's a primate who may have written in heat to George and Kevin something that may not represent his true thinking? Or do we just take the lump and go forward? Well, we took the hit and went forward.
Yeah. So.
And then we had the ACNA, when we pointed out the Chuck Murphy stuff or the corruption and who gets to represent Kenya at the ACC meetings. And all
I remember the Class B bishops.
Yeah.
We got in trouble. Yeah. Kevin and George, we try to be as transparent as we can about the news, but we get in trouble from all sides because of it. We love the ACNA. We do not think that this in any way damages the long-term prospects, maturity, and growth of the ACNA. I think it's an unforced error, and I think it's time to hire a communications person. I think it's time to
learn the right vocabulary. Don't call somebody the right Reverend Canon Doctor. You sound like a South American general, but with all these fake. But the point here is that there's an established way of doing things where we begin by seeing the glass half full and looking for the best in the situation. Mm-hmm. Now, the things I don't care for, but Calvin, I believe the kingdom of God will be closed to those who smoke pipes and wear bowler hats. I just think that God will not tolerate that in his heaven.
Or have clerical Hawaiian shirts.
Clerical Hawaiian shirts. Or mullets, clerical mullets. Calvin has no clerical mullets, but Calvin, get a flat hat and take up the cigar. But get rid of the bowler and get rid of the pipe.
I like them both. So.
But that's me. That's the evangelical heaven. Bowlers and pipes, nip. But it's not that this man is perfect. This man is not above reproach. This man is not without sin. He's a young man who has been gifted far beyond the average ordinary priest in his communications skills and his charisma. And there is no contradiction between having a pastoral life and a public life. I've had a pastoral life for 30 years. I've also had a public life. I mean, I've called Catherine Jeffertt Shorey a liar to her face when I could prove it. Mm. You and I got into the fight. We got down and dirty in the mud with Chuck Murphy, where his press officer was saying all sorts of things about us that we were being paid to say what we were doing.
We were nuked.
They must have the wrong address, Kevin, because we never got the checks, did we? But at no time has it ever interfered with the parish ministry. It's only when you neglect one to do the other. Mm-hmm. And it's perfectly possible to keep both going.
It is. I mean, when I click the publish up button here, I enjoy going to a church that doesn't really know about Unscripted. I can disappear into obscurity. I don't tell people at church what I do. I don't tell them about Anglican TV. Some of them know, some of them watch, but in general, I don't want to spend coffee hour talking about the last episode. So I do enjoy it.
How are we on time?
You don't even want to know. We've hit 50 minutes. You better pick 2 stories you want to talk about. What did we skip last week?
Okay, let's jump down to Forward in Faith in the UK and Malawi report finds clergy are bad business risks.
Okay. So Forward in Faith, let's do Forward in Faith UK, had a festival this past weekend. It was held in London at St. Magnus the Martyr in Holbrook. They had a guest speaker. Now you're probably thinking, maybe Ron Williams. No, maybe Keith Ackerman. No. Who on earth would go to a Forward in Faith UK event, George?
Esther Pryor, the Bishop of Aston, a black woman originally from Zimbabwe, is a bishop, suffragan, area bishop in the Church of England. It was last week, because I just copied last week's sheet to this week, but it was actually 2 weeks ago, because this is one of the stories that got kicked back. Forward in Faith has its annual festival, which is a big deal for those who are of that worldview mindset churchmanship. And Forward in Faith and their allies, the Society and other groups, watch the women's lobby, and the Church of England has decided to come out and say, okay, we're not going to play nice anymore. If you don't accept women clergy, out you must go. And at their last meeting, they had one of the suffragette area bishops in Southwark Diocese say, yeah, I supported it then, but no more now. These guys have had long enough to get right and to get straightened out, but we're not going to give them any more slack. Esther Pryor, a brand new woman, a black African woman priest who's now a bishop of the Church of England, said, I am with you, brothers. I believe that you have an honored and respectable place in the Church of England. Now ask yourself, she's from Zimbabwe. Oh, that's another story we skipped from last week. They don't have women priests in Zimbabwe. She had to go to England to be a priest. Even then, she said, Forward in Faith must be given the freedom within the structures of the Church of England. And if we let you guys down now over women, what's the next issue where we promise to be nice to you who oppose gay marriage for 5 minutes, So it's a good news story. Forward in Faith had an unexpected ally pop up at their annual festival in Holborn.
Well, that's the thing. When you agree to something like the promise of dual integrities, you have to be sure, 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you have the leadership in the right place, or you have advocates in the right place to keep dual integrities working and running and operating. Because we saw what the lack of dual integrities has done to the Church of England in the last 20 years. It's been decimated, by bad women clergy. There's good women clergy in the Church of England, but the bad ones are just way bad. That's so I just, and they get promoted to bishop. There's another story we missed too, is the woman bishop who's been asked to step down, but we'll get to that some other time. First,
Scotland.
Scotland. Yeah. No. Well, we'll talk about that soon.
Well, that's almost becoming Indian corruption story repetition.
All right, let's do the last story here. You wanted to do the women clergy in Central Africa? It's a big story.
Well, you know more about the business. What do you feel like?
Oh yeah, let's do the business thing. Where's that here?
Can we do like 30 seconds and just congratulations to a friend of this program, Steve Null?
Oh yeah, Steve Null.
Steve Null. Ashley Null. Oh my!
Like I said at the beginning, we
will make mistakes, and I humbly, deeply apologize to Ashley Null.
So let's talk about Bishop Ashley Null. So congratulations. He was consecrated as the Bishop of North Africa. What was the
North Africa?
Yeah,
had a service in Tunis. I saw Bob Duncan in the photos, as well as representatives from the GAFCON and the Global South Anglicans and Archbishop Sammy from Alexandria. Ashley Null's episcopacy goes all the way down to Chad, up into Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, and he basically is the Bishop of the Sahara.
Wow.
He's essentially the. I wish they could have done something in Hippo, because he is the successor to St. Augustine of Hippo, and it would have been a nice little Anglican touch to do that. But he started his ministry. He is one of the leading scholar of Cranmer in the world.
Oh, he's the leading. Okay, in my humble opinion, yeah, absolutely.
And he's also one of the nicest men you'll ever meet. Just
genuine nice man. Yeah.
Nice guy.
Absolutely. And he'll tell you all the we've had these off the record conversations with Ashley when we go to GAFCON and other things. So you can't tell anybody, but I found these amazing scripts of Thomas Aquinas. Well, he just has so much knowledge, and he's done so much research, and he's just he loves so much what he does, and that's very unique.
My only fear is that he is now in a place. He is like you and me, Kevin, in one aspect, where being the heat of the Sahara is not going to be good for him. He's not skinny and can take the heat. So I hope his health holds up.
Absolutely.
Seriously, I hope his health holds up, because there are some places where you serve in this world, in the church, where you have the threat of militant Islam and
weather and disease.
And disease.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we're at 56 minutes. We'll do more stories. You want to do the business in the church story, but that deserves more than 4 minutes. Let's close up here. Advice to Calvin. Calvin, I think you can find Depot somewhere else. I think one of the best places to look right now is GAFCON. You could find a wonderful archbishop of some province out there who would be glad to give you some oversight right now. I think that's the way forward, unless somebody else within the ACNA wants to take on the challenge.
Let's just think out loud. Zanzibar and Tanzania, and in the Congo, West Africa, the Caribbean. Even though Jamaica is loosey-goosey, the other dioceses there are very Anglo-Catholic, very traditionally minded. And he is of Jamaican heritage, so maybe the Bishop of Belize, the Bishop of Guyana. There are, and then, talk to someone like Bill Wantland or Keith Ackerman and say, what should I do?
Sure.
And in other words, there are men of character and integrity who do not have the pressures that Ray Sutton has, who could probably open doors. Yeah,
and you want to get yourself out of the episcopate foster system as fast as possible. You got to find some good moderators. You got a good head on your shoulders, and
if you're able to, the Diocese of the Arctic, there are, I don't want to say peripheries, but there are places where the church is thriving in the main line, is orthodox, is joyful, and it's just a question. And you could stay in Grand Rapids in your house, and you could do all your political stuff. Bishop of Zanzibar wouldn't care in the slightest what you'd said. In fact, he'd love it, because it'd give attention to his diocese.
Just advice from Kevin and George.
Don't give up.
Don't give up. No. I'm Kevin Kallsen.
And I'm George Conger. We've not discussed Indian corruption.
No.
We've not discussed Scottish women bishops.
No.
I feel, folks, that we've let you down today.
Well, I mean, it got to be a big discussion. I was a little distracted by that silly tractor out there. He keeps coming closer. He's going to mow the lawn.
The answer is, come back next week.
Next week, yes. Yeah.
And you will see the wonders of the Anglican world unfold. And this has been episode 915 of Anglican Unscripted.